Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Southern magnolias are a staple here in the South. Today we're going to talk about some unusual varieties. Also, we're going to plant bare root strawberries. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Dale Skaggs. Dale is the Director of Horticulture here at the Dixon Gallery and Gardens, and Mr. D will be joining me later. Dale, it's always good to see you.
Always good to see you, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
It is a blustery day here at the Dixon. What do you think about that?
It is. It's March winds, right?
It's March winds, right?
Yeah.
Right,
So,
yeah, we're going to talk about magnolias, right?
yeah, this is, a lot of people are familiar with the classic southern magnolia, the evergreen leaves, the blooms that are sort of sporadic all summer,
Right.
very fragrant. They take up a lot of real estate, but beautiful nonetheless. There are some smaller forms like Little Jim and some others.
Yeah, I like
but this time of year, it's hard to rival the beauty of the deciduous magnolias, and there's a whole host of them. The star magnolias, Magnolia stellata, they tend to do real well for us here in the Mid-South. And then you have the saucer magnolias, which are the Solangiana types, big goblet flowers. Our friend Felder Rushing down in Mississippi, he jokingly always says that whenever the magnolias are freezing, or whenever the magnolias are in bloom, it causes a late freeze, like it's kind of a cause and effect relationship. But they do seem to get zapped by the cold quite a bit. Our neighbors across the street have an amazing collection at the Memphis Botanic Gardens. This is one that's showing off. The wind is taking care of the petals really quickly though, so it's fleeting. But this is one of the little girl series. I believe they were bred at the National Arboretum, and I was trying to determine these were planted before I arrived. I've been here about 15 years at the Dixon, and this is either Jane or Anne, and I think consensus is that it's Anne. With these dark petals, and then they fade as they go.
Yeah, those are pretty though.
They're actually not petals; they're tepals on magnolias. But anyway, so yeah, it's glorious in the spring, and it's deciduous. It loses its leaves, and you have these fuzzy buds that form in the fall, and those carry through the winter, and then you're blessed with these beautiful blossoms in the spring. I love the deciduous magnolias.
Yeah, they are pretty.
And it's kind of white or a lighter color on the inside of the tepal. For culture, you probably keep it out of the hot afternoon sun, but I think morning sun is best for them here in the Mid-South. We're a little warmer, but this plant grows all the way up into New England, so it's a perfectly hardy plant. And quite frankly, further north, a lot of times they have better luck with it because our weather is so sporadic. You know, it goes from warm to cold so quick. So when they warm up, they generally come on out and they have less problems with the late freeze than we actually have here in the Mid-South.
Okay, well, I guess Dale will go and see if we can find another one, right? All right, Dale, so tell me about this magnolia.
This is another one of the deciduous magnolias. It's one of my favorites. This is Magnolia Elizabeth, and it was the first bred yellow magnolia, and it was bred for the yellow color by the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens.
Oh, wow.
It's named Elizabeth for their director emeritus,
Okay.
Elizabeth Schultz. She was with the garden for a long time, and I was actually at the garden several years back, and she was still coming in and volunteering because she felt so passionately about the garden. So she dedicated much of her life to the gardens. But so what a fitting tribute. Magnolia Elizabeth, and they got the yellow from a native Tennessee plant. Do you know the cucumber tree?
Yes, I do.
Magnolia
Yes,
acuminata. They call it cucumber tree because it has those fruits that look like a little cucumber late in the season, and they crossed it with some other magnolias to create this.
Beautiful tree, yeah, it's real fuzzy.
And it has more of this goblet shape, which I really like, but it's kind of a lemony yellow. It works well with all the spring flowers, and it's this one's been here, I've been here like 15 years, and this one's been here. It was planted probably 5 years before I got here. So it's not a fast grower, and so this is kind of a mature specimen for us here in the Mid-South. But look at the little fuzzy.
Yeah, it's so fuzzy.
That's the fuzzy buds I was talking about earlier. You can see it's kind of like, and those kind of break off when the flowers emerge in the spring. But really just a glorious tree. Then it has a kind of a matte green leaf the rest of the summer, but now is its time.
Now is its
Beautiful.
time. So what is the range of this magnolia?
Obviously it goes up into New York, Brooklyn, New York, so it's got a pretty wide range on it as well. But this one seems to miss the freezes. It's a little smarter than the other ones. The time it comes out is a little different. So it actually misses the freezes that's plagued the Solangianas and the others. So
Okay.
it's a great plant for the
Yeah, it's
Mid-South.
beautiful. All right. Let's go see the other one. All right, Dale.
Another yellow one.
Another yellow one. Beautiful. What is this?
This is one called Butterflies.
Butterflies. How about that?
Yeah, it's a great magnolia. It's a beautiful one. We have several of them around the south lawn, and it does look like butterflies when
It does.
you
It
look at it.
brightens this whole area.
And they're fragrant as a bonus. Very fragrant. Anyway, this is another one. Guess where the yellow came from? That same Tennessee magnolia, Magnolia acuminata.
Okay.
And they crossed it with denudata, which I think is probably the same thing they used on the Elizabeth magnolia.
Okay.
And there are several other greens. There's Yellow Lantern and several others, but the two that I really like are Elizabeth and Butterflies. And a little bit larger stature magnolia. And you notice this one, there's fewer leaves on it. The leaves are just starting to emerge at the same time with the Elizabeth, but this one is just bare stems. There are no leaves whatsoever. So the leaves will follow right after the flowers.
Okay.
And anyway, just a real showy plant in the spring. The color matches with all the pastel colors of spring. And it's just a wonderful plant to add a lot to the landscape. You can see it gets pretty big. And I actually planted this one. So
So you planted this one. How
yeah,
about that?
so it's grown fairly
long ago?
quickly. It seems probably maybe 12 years ago.
12 years ago. Wow.
So it was a decent size when we started, but I think that this one is a faster grower than Elizabeth.
Okay.
So, and you can see it's got a little bit more open habit, but it is in a little bit more shade than Elizabeth's growing in.
Okay. And so that's okay. It is growing in the
Well,
shade?
it needs morning sun. You can see it gets morning sun. That's the west that way, so it gets morning sun. And you can see it's not really flowering much on the other side.
Yeah, I see that.
So
I do see that. But it's still a beautiful tree.
it's a beautiful tree. Hardy from zone 9 to 5, something like that.
Okay. How do we take care of this tree?
You know, you want to start off with some good soil when you plant it. You want to put in a lot of organic material and compost. Magnolias have surface roots. All magnolias have these surface roots. And actually, if you dig around a magnolia, the roots smell as sweet as the flowers if you break the roots.
Okay.
But so you know when you're disturbing the roots, but you don't want to disturb the root zone around magnolias after you plant them.
That's good to know.
So, but I'd say morning sun. It can get at least a half day sun here in the Mid-South, but you know that western baking sun
Yes.
is so tough here
Yes, it
in the
is.
Mid-South.
Yes, it is.
But it's tough. I don't know of any insect
Yeah,
or
any
pest
pests,
problems.
anything
No,
like that?
nothing.
Okay.
So it's a tough, easy to care for plant that'll give you many years of pleasure.
Many, many years of pleasure. I can
Yeah.
tell you like this magnolia.
Yeah, I do.
Good deal. Legume.
Legume,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, Chris, I looked that up in the dictionary, and I hate it when they do that. They say a legume is a leguminous plant.
Yes.
I'm like, well, that cleared that up, you know. But actually, a better definition, I think, would be it's a member of the pea family. You know, and the legumes all have that nitrogen fixing ability in their roots that makes those nodules. So they're a good green manure crop.
Right.
They're ones that don't need a lot of fertilizer, particularly nitrogen, because they fix their own.
That's right.
So, you know, that means a legume is it's our one of our big food crops, of course, the legume family. Think about soybeans, you know, pinto beans, butter beans, you know, all the things that we eat that are from the legume family.
Mr. D, what are we doing out here today?
I think we're going to plant some strawberries. You have some growing, and that's good. We're going to try not to disturb the ones that are growing because they look a lot better than the ones that we're planting.
Okay.
And we've got some right here, like this little fella right here.
Yeah, I
I'm going
see
to be
it.
very careful not to disturb him. So, you know, ideally, when we're planting strawberries this time of the year, then we're planting them for the matted row system.
Okay.
And so ideally you would plant them between 1.5, 2.5 feet apart, and if you had enough room, because they're going to have, you know, 50, 60, 70 daughter plants.
Wow, that's a
And so
lot.
you want to have room for them to spread out and drop the daughter plants. This is what this is right here. These are daughter
It's
plants
daughters, okay.
that are living
Gotcha.
here now. We don't have that much room here, so we're going to plant them a little bit thicker. You know, if you have bare root plants, you need to make sure that the roots don't dry out, and that's what we've got here. And we've got a little bit of water in the bottom of this bucket. Can't see it very well. I'll just tilt it here like that a little bit, but you want to make sure the roots don't dry out. And before we do anything else, I'm just going to let them continue to sit here in this water.
Okay.
And we're going to do a little bit of tillage. We want to till this.
We're gonna do a little tilling.
Tillage. I'm going to get this out of the way.
All right.
Yeah, we need to break this up a little bit,
Okay.
and you know, it's in pretty good shape.
Not too
as
bad,
far
huh?
as moisture's concerned.
Okay.
You know that let me till it up.
Move that out the way here.
I miss my PTO driven tractor mounted tiller right here. But, we'll get it broken up pretty good.
Soil looks pretty good, huh?
Yeah, it's
Not bad.
looks like we've got quite a bit of organic matter there. When we plant these strawberries, we're going to, after we plant them, we're going to water them in. And the main reason, even though we obviously have adequate moisture in the soil here, but we want to make sure we have good soil to root contact. So we're going to water. I think each plant probably needs at least a half a pint of water.
Wow. Okay.
When you plant bare root strawberries, it's extremely important that you plant them at the right depth. If you plant them too deep, they will die, and if you plant them too shallow, they will also die. So you plant them, you make sure the roots are covered, but you don't want the crown of the strawberry underground.
Okay.
So we're going to be very, very careful when we plant them to make sure we have them at the right depth. If we do that, half the battle will be won.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, before I pull the plants out, I think I'm going to go ahead and open up the holes. Got to decide how I'm going to space them out.
Okay.
And like I said, a 1.5 feet would be ideal. I'm going to plant one of them right there.
All right.
I'm going to go like a foot, I think. And the leftovers, we'll have a few left over. We will heal them in at another location. And if we happen to lose one of these that we plant, we'll be able to plant it a little bit later on.
Okay.
Okay. One,
Okay.
2, 3,
One,
4.
two,
That's
right.
only that's four.
That's four.
They've got to have a little bit of room for the daughter plants to spread.
Okay.
Okay. See what we can do here.
Ah.
I think there's supposed to be 10 plants in here. We'll try to be very careful.
Yeah, man. How about that?
This is one of the plants, the roots, and
There you go.
there's another one. That's a crown. I'm going to lay it back down in the water. That's another one. Doesn't look very healthy. Of course, what's the first thing that we tell you in our extension publications?
Better be good, healthy plants.
Get healthy
right?
plants.
Good, healthy plants.
It's another one. Got a little green coming up on that
Yeah.
one. I may be glad that we only have 4 to plant. It's another one.
Uh-huh.
Now I've got some life showing up here.
Ah. Yeah, it's a good one.
Okay, I'm going to plant one,
Yeah.
and I'm going to try to. I've got a little bit of growth on this one. Normally, if the plants are vigorous and they have 5 or 6 leaves on them, you need to snip off all but 2 or 3 of the healthiest leaves, and then you need to trim the roots a little bit, and it makes them a lot easier to
Okay.
plant. I'm not going to have to take any leaves off of these.
No.
That's not a problem.
And tell us again why you're pruning off a little bit of those roots.
so that it'll fit in my planting hole better,
Fit in the hole.
for one thing. And it also, pruning stimulates growth.
Okay.
So hopefully I'm going to do a little bit of both. So I'm just going to,
Look at that.
it's a little haircut.
Nice little clean cuts.
Okay. All right. We need this opened up a little bit more. Again, I want to make sure that the crown is above ground and all the roots are underground. If any of the roots are exposed, it's too shallow.
Okay.
And if the crown, this portion right here at the junction of the roots and the stem, if it is underground, it's too deep.
Okay. Too deep.
I'm going to make the hole bigger than I need it, really, so I can spread the roots out some.
Do we need to be concerned with fertilizer or anything like that?
Not right now.
Not right now?
I'd give them a few weeks, and
Okay.
then you'll need to, and we'll do that. We'll come
Okay.
out here in 3 or 4 weeks and give them a little shot. Now I'm going to hang on to that plant.
Just backfill.
When we water it in, we may have to add a little bit more soil if I see some of the roots are exposed. Okay, I think we're got everything in the ground here.
Yeah.
I think we're just going to water them in a little bit.
Okay, looks good, man.
Yeah, let's see what we got here. Let me go back to
We
where
go on this side.
in order.
Guess it'll settle a little bit.
I just don't want to wash a
Oh,
hole in the
wash it, right.
ground. I don't want to wash a hole in the ground and wash the soil away from the roots. That's why I'm going very slowly. I want to make sure I don't have any more bubbles coming up out of the ground. If I can. Now, if I were doing this on a commercial basis, we would have stuck them in the ground quick, and we would turn the irrigation system on.
You did that
Water
for us.
'em in.
Yeah. I think you did
But
a
I'm
good
going to
job.
look, and I don't think, if I see any roots exposed, I may have a little bit of exposure right there. So I'm just going to,
I don't see much on this
not
one.
much, I'm just going to add a little bit of dry soil right there. Okay.
All right, Mr. D. Well, we'll see
good.
what happens, right?
Yeah, we
We
will.
shall see.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. Thank you, sir. We appreciate that.
Okay.
Stop volcano mulching. This is entirely too much mulch around this tree. What usually happens is when you have mulch like this piled up against the tree, it keeps the bark wet. When that bark stays wet, it starts to decay. Once it starts to decay, then guess what? You have fungal problems, bacterial problems, and possible pest problems. So what you should do is start taking the mulch away from the tree. You want to expose these root flares. And what you're trying to do with mulch is trying to mimic Mother Nature. You want to bring the mulch out to the drip line of the tree if you can. Once you take the mulch back, you should always be able to see the root flares. Here are your root flares here. Okay. Leave those exposed. And there you have it. Your tree is going to thank you for it. All right, Dale, here's our Q&A segment. You ready?
All right, this is gonna be fun.
This is gonna be fun, man. These
All
are
right.
great questions, all right? You ready?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. I think you'll like the first question.
Okay.
All right, here's our first viewer email. I have a 7-foot crepe myrtle tree, but I would like to cut it back to maybe 4 or 5 feet to make it a bush. Can I do this? And this is Audrey in Camden, Tennessee. So can Audrey do this?
Well, yes, Audrey can
Yes,
do this,
yes,
but
he can do it, yeah.
But you know, there's a big push. A lot of big crepe myrtle trees are just kind of like hacked off, and they just look ridiculous.
And what do we call that?
Crepe murder.
Ah,
crepe
crepe
murder.
murder.
Yeah,
Yes,
crepe murder.
yes,
And
okay.
I think Jason Reeves with Extension on his emails, he has a tagline that
Yeah,
says,
stop
"Crepe murder, stop the chop."
The chop. Yeah, I like that.
But horticulturally, we've been cutting back trees hard for a long time. You know, the pollarding, you ever hear that term, where they cut the big branches back? And so horticulturally, there's nothing wrong with it, but aesthetically, it just looks awful. You know,
doesn't look
we like to
good.
have that nice shape on a crepe myrtle, you know?
Sure.
So yes, you can do
Yes.
it, but don't tell Jason Reeves. No, no. I mean, I see Jason's point. You know, these big crepe myrtles look wonderful when they're tree shaped with, you know, but when you chop them, they just look kind of a little bit ridiculous, and they also send out a lot of
Yeah, they
water
do.
shoots. You
They-
know,
they sure do.
And so
They sure do.
So anyway, so just see if you can live with it unless it's growing. You're better off pruning canes out at the bottom that you
Okay, I
want
was
to get
gonna
rid
mention-
of instead
yeah.
of chopping the top.
Right. I was gonna, say that same thing. So yeah, that way you can get a 4 or 5 foot bush. Or how about next time, dwarf? They have dwarf crepe myrtles.
Yeah, right plant, right place.
Right plant, right place.
Yeah.
All right, Audrey. Hope that helps you out there. All right, here's our next via email. What is the best fern for a hanging basket that will grow full and long? Also, how do I care for it? Thank you. This is Tim from Statesville, North Carolina.
Okay, Tim. You know, the Boston fern is the common
Yeah.
one that's always
My
used.
mom
on,
has one, yeah.
you hang them on the front porch in the South. It's kind of
She
an
does.
icon of the South.
Yeah.
But those need a little bit of shade, or they'll get a little crispy. So if you don't have shade, there's one called macho fern that it's
Macho.
big.
Yeah.
As the name implies, it gets
Yeah.
really big, and
like
they
that.
can be a really full basket for sure.
Okay.
So and they can bring those indoors and take them back out as well. You know, they're not tough enough to stay outside for the winter is what I'm saying. So you can bring them indoors, keep them inside as a houseplant, and then bring them back out in the spring.
Okay, I got
They're going to be happier outdoors on your front porch though,
Gotcha.
probably than they will in your heated
Now,
home.
Yes, I'm sure. Any other ways to care for them? You know, whether they're outside or inside?
Well,
That
you
can
know, hanging baskets.
Like watering? What about watering?
I would say, you know, those hanging baskets probably almost need watering every day, especially when they get full, like that macho fern. You'll fill up the basket; it'll be drooping over the edge, but there's not much soil in there because it's all roots.
Okay.
A big basket of roots.
Yeah.
But a lot of those ferns actually have a water storage sort of. Bulbous thing inside them that you see whenever you divide them. I've
Okay.
seen that several times.
seen
So,
that, okay.
but regular watering probably daily, if not every other day, when the heat of the summer is probably required to keep those maintained.
I would agree with that. All right, Tim. Hope that helps you out there. Thank you for that question. Here's our next via email. I have a neighbor who never mows his yard, and his rattlesnake weeds have come over into my yard, and they're impossible to get rid of. Do you have any suggestions for getting rid of rattlesnake weed? Thank you, and this is Phyllis. So they're rattlesnake weed or Florida betony.
Florida betony.
Florida betony is native to
So broadleaf.
Florida.
It's a broadleaf. I
It's a
guess.
broadleaf. It's a
yeah.
broadleaf. It's actually a winter perennial.
Is it? Okay.
Right, it grows by tubers. The tubers look like rattles of a rattlesnake.
That's where it gets its
So
name.
that's where it gets
Okay.
its name, right? It's very difficult to control. I always like to start with cultural practices first. You need a thick, dense lawn
Okay.
to crowd it out, number one. Number two, you have to mow at the correct height.
Right.
Okay, and then of course fertilize according to your soil test.
Yeah.
You know, do those things culturally. That should help. If we're
What
talking
about a broadleaf herbicide? Will
so
that-
we're
will
talking
that-
about
is that-
chemicals, then you can use a broadleaf weed herbicide.
And that'll take care of it.
That'll take up. It's going to be multiple applications though.
Is that like 2,4-D or something?
2,4-D, MCPP, and dicamba.
Okay.
That's what you're going to be looking for. Those are your three-way herbicides. But read and follow the label on that, though.
Okay.
Read and follow the label. But I always like to start with those cultural practices first.
Right.
Then, if you need chemicals, we can give you that too.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, the old rattlesnake weed can be
Yeah.
a problem. It's in the mint family. Did you know that? It has a square
stem, yeah.
Mhm. Has a square stem in the mint family. So there you go, Miss Phyllis. Yeah, have fun with that. That's going to be difficult. All right. Here's our next via email. This is interesting, right? So I have read that people are using sodium polyacrylate in their raised gardens and pots. This is the same water absorbent material found in diapers. The thought is that it holds moisture so you don't have to water as much. What are your thoughts on this? Is it harmful to the plants or soil? Or more importantly, does it work? Thanks, and this is Craig from Columbus, Ohio. So what do you think about that?
Well, it's been around for a while.
Yeah,
TerraSorb
yeah.
is one of the brand names, and a lot of people use it if they're planting, like in the heat of the summer,
Okay.
and they want to make sure the plants stay moist. They put this in the hole. I think it kind of dissipates over time, but I'm not exactly sure of the
Yeah,
long-term implications from using it. We've used it in containers here at the Dixon. I've got a really funny story.
Let's hear it.
The guy, Greg Francis, who used to work here, he would always do our containers. And he got some of this material that you're talking about that they use in the diapers,
Right.
and he mixed it in with the soil that he put in the containers. And then he planted everything, and then he went in to water it. Well, that stuff expands like 2 times. So the next morning, all the plants, it was like a volcano had erupted, and they were all on the ground.
Right.
So I will say, moisten the soil before
Yes,
you plant,
please.
before you put it in the container. But you know, I don't know if there's any long-term implications
Yeah.
for it. But you know, if you prepare the soil right and you're putting the right plant in the right place and you're planting the right
There you
time
go.
of the year, you know, like landscapers, sometimes they're finishing up a construction project and they have to plant in the summer. You know, seasonality in gardening is such a big thing. So if
Okay.
you're doing the right thing at the right
Got
time,
it.
it makes a huge difference. So you're not fighting nature
Yeah.
as much, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I agree with that. That's good.
so I would say you shouldn't need it except for in special circumstances. But like I said, we have used it in containers.
Okay.
But good organic material and you know, proper watering, planting at the right time, I think you shouldn't need it.
I think they should get it, Craig. Yeah, pretty interesting story. That's a funny
All right.
story about that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dale.
Uh-huh.
It's good as always. Thank you. Appreciate that. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. We're coming up on spring and it's about time to plant the garden. To get ready, visit familyplotgarden.com. We have lots of information about soil, bugs, plants, diseases, and so much more. It's all there to help you have the best garden ever. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.